You are listening to the Spactastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Lyne's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is Episode 6, New Revelations. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
Once inside, I walked over to my desk and sank into my chair. I wheeled it over to the heavy ceiling-to-floor, red velvet curtain behind my desk. I tugged on the rope cord next to the curtain to reveal a large marker board. I picked up a black marker resting in the board's ridge and removed the cap, placing it on the opposite end of the marker. What do we know? Nate sat down on the window seat next to the desk. We know that both you and Major Meadows were injected with CPM-203. We know that CPM-203 is a memory-erasing drug still in the experimental stages. I wrote that on the board. We know that if the memories aren't recovered within a week, that the memory loss becomes permanent. I cringed at the thought. What if I didn't recover my memory soon? What if I had to live with these gaps in my memory for the rest of my life? It was like living in a fog, feeling your way around in the dark. What if the CPM-203 eventually started to eat away at the rest of my memories? What if I couldn't remember Nate, Reggie, or the rest of my family? I pushed the thought away. No need to borrow trouble, as my great-grandma Maxwell used to say. We also know that Brooklyn Curzon was murdered. We also know she was closing in on a drug ring here on the Liberty, Nate added, rubbing the muscles in his neck. There had been a lot to be tense about with Remy coming to live with us, Brooklyn Curzon's death, my memory loss and nightmares. It was probably all taking its toll on him. I decided that after we finished this case, we'd take a little Randar. We were in the middle of a war, so we couldn't be spared for long, maybe only the weekend, but that would be enough time to remove those dark bags from Nate's eyes. Dr. Manning and Captain Anderson state that there were items missing from the shipments they ordered, but Baker denies it, I said, adding it to the list. We know a lot, I noted, surveying the words written on the board. I stroked my chin as I wrinkled my nose. We just have to figure out how all the pieces fit. What about the letter Curzon wrote you? Nate questioned. Did it have any clues to what might have happened? I snapped the cap on the marker, placing it on the ridge. I moved my chair back to my desk. I pulled out the middle drawer, retrieving the envelope with my name scrawled on it. I handed it to Nate, sliding the drawer back into place. He shook the letter from its holder and flipped it open. He stared at it for a moment. It's blank, he announced as if this was the first I was hearing about it, looking at me quizzically. Why would she give you a piece of blank paper? He turned the envelope over, attempting to free anything that may have been lodged in there. Alas. He found nothing. That's what I thought at first too, I explained to Nate, picking up a yellow, No. 2 pencil that I found tucked in the envelope. I put my tongue in my cheek and continued, but now I think that maybe. I grabbed the blank letter from Nate, scratching the pencil over the surface of the letter. The writing began to emerge. I read it to Nate aloud. Grave danger is all I see. She definitely is trying to kill me. She knows me, and she knows you. And when I die, you'll know her too. With an old grudge in tow. Hurting your family is all she knows. The drug ring is not just a cover. Over your family, she will hover. Great-grandma made her mad. And her plan to kill your family is sad, sad, sad. The drugs are in a place you would never think. They are shoved in something that blinks. This is your enemy to slay. I know you can handle what comes your way. Take my son, Remy, in as your own. Don't let him be alone. I trust you to give him good care. To find a good friend like you is extremely rare. I threw down the letter. This note is so cryptic. I know she is trying to tell me something, but what? I folded my arms. Like when she says, "And when I die, Jag," how did she know that she was going to die? My mind flashed onto a blonde woman, the same woman in my dream, the one Nate said was Brooklyn Curzon, in an infirmary bed, hooked up to a Dian monitor. I saw myself sitting on the edge of her bed, holding her hand and pushing her hair out of her eyes. I pressed my thumb to the center of my comlet and instructed, "Dr. Manning, this is Colonel Masters. Please transfer Brooklyn Curzon's medical records to my terminal." Nate's eyes widened in surprise. "Did you remember something?" "I don't know. That's why I want the medical records." I had a flash of visiting Brooklyn Curzon in the infirmary, I told him, picking my Quan pad off my desk. "Download complete," Chip proclaimed in the silence of the room. My words still hung in the air like humidity before a rain. "Chip, in Brooklyn Curzon's medical records, did she have any pre-existing conditions before she was shot?" I required of the computer. Authorization Alpha Alpha Zulu Charlie Echo. Authorization successful. Brooklyn Curzon tested positive for Jameen fever in 2147. Her condition, came his answer. I prompted the computer, "Chip, what is Jameen fever exactly?" Similar in properties to the AIDS virus in the 21st century, Jameen fever is a biologically created illness that is contracted, the computer recited, through contact with another person's blood. Symptoms appear immediately. Over a period of 2 years, the virus eats away at various organs in the body. Would you like to hear the symptoms? No, thank you, Chip. What was the condition of Brooklyn Curzon? I pressed the computer, before she was shot. She was hospitalized from August 13, 2151 to August 17, 2151. Dr. Manning prescribed, the computer related, the experimental drug HRB-202. As of the time of her death, the drug had failed to be effective. Chip, estimate, for me, I persisted, how much longer Brooklyn Curzon would have lived. Taking into consideration, the computer estimated, variables such as will to live and whether the HRB-202 would have taken effect, 6 months maximum, 2 months, minimum. Let me get this straight, Nate began with grave deliberation, standing up. He paced from one end of the window seat to the other before proceeding. Jeremy would have come to live with us within the next 6 months, even if his mother hadn't been shot. He stopped, looking at me expectantly. Apparently so, I agreed, not sure where he was going with this. When Brooklyn Curzon discussed this with you, why didn't you come to me? He demanded, walking from one end of the window seat to the other. It's not that I don't like Remy because I do. He paced with his hands clasped behind his back. And it's not that I mind taking him in because I don't. He stopped again, staring at me. I don't like people withholding information from me. You know that. I waved at him. Hello? Woman over here with a gap in her memory. I don't remember having the conversation with Brooklyn Curzon about taking in Remy, nevertheless why I didn't discuss it with you. Nate sat down on the corner of my desk. There was very little that I didn't discuss with Ben, except for our cases, of course. Since you are both my husband and my partner, I continued, moving my chair toward him and grabbed his hands, I don't foresee any reason I wouldn't have discussed this with you unless. Unless what? Unless I found out right before I was injected with the CPM-203. Nate's lips spread into a smile, and his face brightened as if someone had shot sunshine right into his cheeks. That is a possibility, isn't it? You could have been on your way to contact me. Or you could have been waiting to discuss it with me when I came back from my workshop. He cradled my face with his hands and kissed me deeply on the mouth. Oh, Peek, I love you. I love you too, I replied, regarding him curiously. 1 minute he was pacing the floor. The next, he was kissing me. What was wrong with this picture? I was going crazy thinking that you would deliberately withhold information from me, explained Nate, stroking my cheeks with his thumbs. Now Jag, in the 11 years we've been partners, have I ever kept information from you? Not unless you were ordered by a higher-up or told in the strictest of confidence. He kissed me again. So, you would never choose to keep something from me. That's what I have been trying to tell you, I whispered, returning his kiss. Wait. Brooklyn Curzon wrote with an old grudge in tow. Hurting your family is all she knows. The drug ring is not just a cover. Over your family, she will hover. Great-grandma made her mad. And her plan to kill your family is sad, sad, sad. I looked up at Nate. I could feel my eyes widen to the size of saucers, and the blood drain out of my face as the reality set in. This drug ring was a vendetta to destroy my family. Peek, what is it? What's wrong? Nate's face grew haggard with worry. A stress line furrowed his brow. Someone wants to kill our family, my family, our family, I stated in a voice as cold as death, then chewed on my bottom lip. I tightened my grip on Nate's hand. That's what that letter was getting at, I went on, my voice rose an octave. My mind reeled. A sickening wave of terror welled up in my stomach. My heart pounded as my pulse roared in my ears. I'm the reason that Brooklyn Curzon was killed. I felt beads of sweat forming on my brow. I reached up to wipe them away. Suddenly, my head started to spin. What is happening to me, I wondered to myself. I felt as if a hand closed in around my throat as my body went limp. Then everything around me went black. My eyes fluttered open. I looked around the room cautiously. I took in everything, glancing at my infirmary bed, the dian monitor I was hooked up to, the empty bed next to me, then my eyes fell upon Nate, who was talking with Dr. Manning in the doorway of my room. I pushed myself up in a sitting position and looked at Nate quizzically. Nate glanced back at me, realizing that I had woken up. I saw him say something to the doctor before the doctor scurried out the door and down the hallway. Before I could say anything, Nate moved over to the edge of my bed, sitting down. Peek, you fainted after losing a fair amount of blood, he said, clutching my hand. The doctor ran some tests to determine what happened. Right now, he is waiting for the results. He thinks that it might be a side effect of the CPM 203. Dr. Manning picked that moment to march back into my room with his quan pad in his hand and announced bluntly, the tests prove conclusively that you suffered a miscarriage, Colonel. The doctor sauntered off. Doctor, get back here, I shouted so loud that it hurt my own ears. Dr. Manning snapped to attention at the foot of my bed. Was there something else? Was there something else, I required, an edge of impatience creeping into my voice. You want to fill me in on what you are talking about? Dr. Manning glanced at Nate. Don't look at him. He can't help you now. Making a V with my fingers, I pointed to my eyes. Don't take your eyes off my face. When his eyes flew to me, I continued, now, before I lost my memory, did I know that I was pregnant? The day after Lieutenant Colonel Masters left, you came in here because you felt sick to your stomach and the thought of food made you ill. You suspected that you might be pregnant. When I ran the pregnancy test, it came back positive, he answered. I could hear how strained his voice was, but I couldn't let this go. I had to know. And, doctor, what did I do when you told me? You patched a call through to Lieutenant Colonel Masters, telling him that you had good news but preferred to tell him in person. Nate squeezed my hand, staring adoringly into my eyes. I remember that. I begged you to tell me. You know how crazy I get when I don't know a secret. How did I stammered, glancing up at the doctor. I bit my bottom lip hard to keep the tears from flowing. Nate whispered, it's okay. No, I want to do this. I closed my eyes briefly. Upon opening them, I took a deep breath. Doctor, do you know how I lost the baby? The CPM 203 in your system caused you to miscarry. The doctor turned to walk away. Nate looked in his direction and called out, "Do you know whether the baby was a boy or a girl?" "I don't see what difference that makes now, Lieutenant Colonel. However, the fetus was of a female gender." When the doctor left the room, I muttered, "Abigail Rose Masters." I turned on my side to see Nate better, mumbling, "And thus it begins." I wasn't over Joshua, and now, I lost Abigail. I felt as if my heart had been ripped out of my body, stomped on 1,000,000 times, and then the pieces were put back into my body and expected to function. I shook my head in commiseration. Before Reggie was born, I never wanted to have children. They didn't fit into my plan. I didn't want to follow in my mother's footsteps and be an absentee mother. But my life took some unexpected turns. The first day I arrived in Washington, D.C., I met Cougar, the man who recruited me into the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau and introduced me to Ben. Ben and I dated for a while. He proposed. We got married. And 2 years later, I was pregnant with Regina. The first moment I held Reggie in my arms, I felt so much love and protectiveness for the wee one that the tough military woman I prided myself on being crumbled under the pressure. And for that brief moment, while my defenses were down, Reggie and I shared our first tender, tearful mother-daughter moment. I knew I couldn't let Reggie be an only child and vowed to have at least one more. I just wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. First, I lost Ben and Joshua, Brooklyn, although I didn't really remember her, and now, Abigail Rose, who I didn't know about until she was gone. Why? Why was she gone? Why did it have to happen, though? Why did my baby, Nate, and my baby, have to die? With an old grudge in tow. Hurting your family is all she knows. The drug ring is not just a cover. Over your family, she will hover. Great-grandma made her mad. And her plan to kill your family is sad, sad, sad kept echoing through my head. What did it mean? I shut my eyes tightly and held my head, praying for it to stop, but it didn't. I gazed at Nate, noticing how his face twisted in anguish, how wounded his eyes looked. I caused that pain by losing Abigail. Maybe if I had been more careful, I wouldn't have been injected with CPM 203. "I'm sorry," I said in a quiet voice. "I am sorry that I lost your daughter." "Oh, Peek," Nate replied, focusing his full attention on me. He traced my hair with his hand. "It wasn't your fault. I don't know how you got past losing Joshua because I feel a hole inside of me right now that would make the Grand Canyon look like a gopher hole." He rested his head on my chest. I know, I told him, rubbing his back. His tears steadily fell on the shoulders of my flight coveralls. I bit my tongue hard again to keep the tears from flowing. I bit it so hard that I tasted blood once again. This was Nate's time to grieve. I had to be strong for him as he had been for me when Ben and Joshua died. "Don't worry, I am going to track down the person who killed our baby." Nate rose his head and stared at me incredulously. "You want to go after her killer now? Listen, lying here in this bed is not going to bring justice to what happened. Nor is it going to stop the pain of losing yet another child," I retorted, slamming my fist against the bed. "Jag, I am going to find her killer before this woman kills the rest of my family." I snatched the device off my arm and swung my legs around to the edge of the bed. Holding onto the bed for support, I helped myself onto my feet. "Where do you think you are going?" Nate asked, yelling for the doctor, then reached out his hand to steady me. "I need to be with my family right now," I expressed, making my way to the doors. I navigated my way to the main area, surveying the room to find the best route to the doors with the least amount of obstacles, nurses, carts, patients, etc. When I noticed Nate hot on my heel, I returned, "And the best place to do that is our quarters." "You need bed rest, Colonel," Dr. Manning, who arrived on the scene only seconds earlier, rebuked. "I will rest, Doctor." In my quarters, in my own bed, surrounded by my family, I informed Dr. Manning, taking a few unsteady steps toward the doors. The more I walked, the better my steps became. "You can monitor my progress from there." Without another word, I maneuvered my way through the nurses, equipment and visitors until I reached the main entrance. I walked to the travel tram, boarded it and headed for my quarters, quite aware that Nate was following me.
Thank you for listening to the Spacedastic Mysteries podcast.